We set sail on a misty morn, with treasures in our hand, seeking gold in dusty boxes from the land. From yard to yard we search and scrounge, a reseller's gleeful quest, looking for the gems hidden amongst the rest. Oh, oh, and away we go, Pure Hustle Podcast, from yard to yard, flipping items fast. With each find we make our spirits soar, as we flip the treasures and hear that cash floor roar. We walk the aisles of thrift stores old like sorcerers of trade, discerning what is pure gold and what should just be suede. From vintage clothes to old guitars, the jury's out to stay. We'll polish up the rough and sell them top dollar a day.
Welcome to Pure Hustle Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Orlando, and we're here for another Monday mini-sode.
That's right. We are having another Monday mini, and this is our first time. I think we're broadcasting to Twitter /X /whatever. This is our first time trying this. I'm not sure how it's going to work. So if anybody is over there on X or Twitter, go ahead and send us a message so we can try to see if we can interact with you. But man, today we're talking about something that I think is really important to us as resellers, because we've talked a lot about the fact that things have changed a lot in the reselling world. Things have changed economically. Things have changed with trends. And one of the things that kind of has had some changes is eBay. And what we really want to ask ourselves is eBay better today than it was, let's say, a year ago, right? Have things gotten better? Have they implemented things? Are things easier? Or is, like we're feeling in a lot of areas, have things gotten worse? That's what we're going to be talking about today. So if you are in the comments, go ahead and let us know what your thoughts are on this topic as well.
Yeah, and appreciate everybody that is here. And again, we always have these short episodes on Monday, and then we have our long form on Wednesday. So if you ever want to catch our long form, always make sure to hit that bell notification on YouTube or whatever platform you use to follow us on the podcast. So thank you to everyone that's here. I want to start off with, before we start with everything, I like what Scott says. Good morning, gents. Finally catch a live while I list plastic crack. And I was like, plastic crack, LO action figures, which is true. And to me, it's addicting on both ends, because I like selling it, but I think it's cool when I pick up vintage toys and so on. So I totally understand that. Zezo Pug, what's going on? How are you? And Alexander, always appreciate you being here. Thank you to all of you that are joining that maybe haven't commented on this live. So I was thinking about this, because I don't want this to just be like a rant session. I want this to be a moment of encouragement, but also a moment of things to just think about, right? Think about what you're doing, your process, and so on. And so I was thinking about this because, it's middle July, and when you catch our long form, you'll hear about how I hadn't listed like in 7 days, like an entire week. I decided not to list. And because I kind of got tired of it a little bit. And I was thinking, like, is eBay actually better, a year now? It's been a year since last July, because last July things were really good and sales were really good. And so is it me? Why is eBay the way it is? Now, on some ends, you can say easy to tell that eBay is better, because the processes, I think, have improved. I don't know if you would agree with this, Mike, but so example, if you're a new seller, like, chances are some of you can just list your items on your phone without ever having to go to the desktop. Mike, do you use the desktop at all, the MacBook or any of that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't have a Mac, but I use the desktop. I do use the desktop now more than I used to. I used to only be phone, and I think they've added a lot of good features to the phone. But I'm at a place now where I like to, sell similar or make drafts when I'm sourcing the items, and then I'll go onto the desktop to add like bulk changes on things, and then or bulk list them, and then use my phone for taking pictures. But that has kind of just been a more recent change, but I definitely use the phone significantly more than the desktop app.
Yeah, so be encouraged with listing. Like, if you're like, oh, you're listening to this and you probably were drawn to this episode because you're like, oh, I haven't listed on eBay in a while, or I kind of stopped with eBay. Like I would say that listing process actually improved in the fact that on the phone it's pretty streamlined. It's pretty much the same thing as on desktop. The item specifics to me isn't an issue anymore, so I would say yeah, that's a good thing. Now you got to be careful because sometimes people just throw in random facts, but I can list a lot faster now than I could in previous times. And then at the same time, as far as like taking pictures and so on, that's pretty easy on the eBay app. Now, there's a couple catches though. I will say eBay's white background removal has not improved to me. As it's still to me, it's kind of the same. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe other people in the chat.
It does seem kind of the same. I mean, it is faster than when they first launched it, right? It was kind of like, it's not terrible, but here's the thing, like it's one of those things where you need to already have decent pictures taken with like not having tons of shadows, because if you're using a third-party app is going to do much better at removing a background and not having weird like splotchy, like where part of your background is still attached to the item, and that a lot of that has to do with shadows. I think the eBay app has gotten a little bit better than it used to be for sure, but third-party apps still far outpace eBay's when it comes to removing background.
Well, yeah, photo room all day long. All right, now I do like what Susquehanna Picker says here, because I think a couple other people had commented this. This is what I do sometimes. You start a draft on your phone, so similar. You take photos, and then you upload those photos on that, and then, well, they said here they sold their chair and finish on their desktop. That's a lot of what I do, right? And I have templates. So they said copy and paste my description message. Yep. And, Mike and I disagree on this, but I just have basically like 3 different descriptions on my items. It's gently used, has some cosmetic wear, please see pics. Or I've used and abused, has some wear, please see pics. Or have, used, has cosmetic wear throughout, please see pics. And I that's all. I don't put much more. I don't go into great detail. I've never had an issue, but that's something to think about. Mike, go ahead.
I tend to actually use the AI a little bit more than I thought I would. Okay. For a couple of reasons. One, I think that eBay spent money, time, and energy to develop this system, and we know how they are with the algorithm. And I feel like they're going to push items that are using that. Plus, it comes down to like almost like SEO, search engine optimization in some ways too. I'm not as bought into the fact that like everybody is clicking all of the 1,000 possible item specifics when they're searching for things. I think some of them matter. But I think that certain items or certain keywords that could come up in the description might help you when somebody's searching for something. And I think if somebody's using the AI, eBay may show some preference towards those. I think the AI descriptions, you have to be really careful and still like tailor through and read to make sure that it's accurate and it hasn't just, lied, because you could be held accountable if it says something about the item that's not accurate. And I've actually, for a handful of items that I've listed, if it's a little bit more unique, maybe harder to describe, or I'm trying to think of like a really good title, I've actually used the ChatGPT 4.0 or whatever instead of eBay's algorithm. And I basically say, create an eBay listing optimized with like for this item, and then let it come up with the title, let it come up with the description, and it's better. And I would never do that for like 99% of the items I sell, but like for the handful of items where it's like, this is pretty interesting and unique, and I really want like a banger of a title that's going to catch people's attention. I just let it take some of that brunt work, because I can just make some bullet points of like, here's the condition it's in, here's the whatever, and then let it come up with a decent description and title for me.
That is interesting you say that. I wonder if that would work for items that like haven't sold in a while. So for example, I use WorthPoint sometimes because I pick up older items, right? That maybe no one has listed on eBay for like a year or two. But ChatGPT 4.0, I think, goes back forever, right? It goes back as long as the internet's been around. So is it going to be able to pick up and aggregate all that data and allow you to have the best possible title and description for that? I think that's possible. I do. I wonder. Okay, that's a good tip. What I'm going to do is, I think over the next 2 weeks, any new item that I list, I'm going to use the AI. I'm going to use my description and then put the AI description and just see if that helps. Right? I mean, I'm not going to be able to give you like scientific data and all that, but maybe anecdotally, I'll be able to say, what, sales have picked up, and I wonder if this has something to do with it. So, So now
what this person said is very true too. They said, make sure you read the AI sneaky. They will easily get you an item not described case. Yeah, I think that's very true. I mentioned that. I think you got to pay attention to if it has if it's added something, right? Because a lot of times what it does for the AI is it like just pulls like the Wikipedia description of the item, like this company started in 1948. This item is a great for all ages, and so it might have some information in there that's not accurate for your item. So yeah, you got to be very careful with that you're reading through that. I mean, I think that's the case with anything. Like you always want to proofread AI. It's very obvious. I think AI is an incredible tool, especially a writing tool for people to use. The hard part is people don't understand how the tool works, and so they just have AI write something for them. They use that as in like an email, and they never proofread to like see like, oh wow, like AI really made that sound like super pompous or like super arrogant, or like that doesn't sound like me at all. Like or that's actually inaccurate. I need to change this. And so use it as a tool. And like I said, I think it could be a useful tool, especially the eBay AI. Even if you're just using it, go through and change some stuff, and then above it you actually put your normal description, just because I think there's a possibility that it helps in the algorithm.
Interesting. Okay. Now the one catch is eBay has to eventually allow videos to be uploaded via the app. Like I haven't been able to do that recently, so hopefully that's coming, or maybe there's something wrong with my app. All right. Now, I will say the one thing eBay has done really well on since last year is research, right? You have that research tool. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you just go to selling on your app. Okay. And it's super easy to find. It's just your last part of the app. You go to selling, and then when you scroll down, it has this thing that says product research. I don't know if you can see it there, but it's where it gives you your 90-day total. It gives you your tasks that you have to complete. And it's really good. I mean, the fact that it's on there, you don't have to go to Seller Hub anymore. But again, there is a warning with that. Make sure you understand that if you're going 2 years back or 3 years back, that item might not sell as well. Now, again, if it's an item that sparingly sells, you may be able to have a higher price for it. So you gotta figure out which way to do it. But make sure you're using that Terapeak ad. I also find that Terapeak ad helps me find keywords, right? Listings that sold for even higher money. It allows me to figure out whether I need to do shipping or no shipping, right? Sometimes you find that like maybe only 10% of the items that sold had actually free shipping, so it doesn't hurt you to charge shipping. So be aware that I think that I shout out to Shelly Ball, who is in charge of that whole department. We were in conversation for a while as they were developing that, and I think it's a great tool. So you haven't checked out Terapeak, check out the product research.
Yeah. I mean, research is key. The more information you have, the better off you're going to be. We often talk about, having that unfair advantage, having that thing that's going to help you out. And the reality is, I don't think most resellers are using Terapeak. I think that was one of the reasons they were slow to roll it out on the app. Is I just don't think most people are doing that level of research, and I don't think it's necessary to do that level of research for most items. But if you're one of the top 5% of resellers because you're using that tool, you're going to put yourself in a good spot. Another thing that you kind of have to consider is we've been talking about some things that eBay has changed for the better, right? We are I hope we're fair to eBay. There's a lot of times where we call eBay out and we call out the problems when there's problems. We never shy away from that. But eBay has some things that they've done well. And one of the things that we have to take into consideration too is as eBay and other sites as well, as things have become more popular for people to be able to list the jeans they were wearing a couple weeks ago that don't fit anymore, and they're going to throw them up on a website. It's gotten very easy, especially on apps, to list things. Before, it took a very specific person to take pictures, maybe actually scan pictures and put them onto the computer and list things on eBay. Whereas now I feel like really anybody can do it. And that level of ease has created more competition. Now, competition isn't necessarily a bad thing because, again, if you're working really, really hard, it's not hard to outwork people who are making mistakes. They don't have good descriptions. They don't have good titles. They're not doing item specifics. Their pictures are bad. They don't have a good reputation because they are bad at shipping. So you can outdo that competition, but that competition is going to have a negative impact on your store. The more people who are selling the same types of items that you're selling, you're going to sell fewer of them. I mean, that's just the case. Or you're going to find fewer of them because, when you go to thrift stores and garage sales, more people are like, hey, this is actually pretty easy to do. I can just quickly list this on Facebook, or I can quickly list this on eBay. So as these programs become easier, like that's a good thing for us. But then you also got to realize that there's that second side to that coin, the other side, which is that it's now easier for everybody. And what was a slight hurdle that may have kept people from doing it, when that hurdle is removed, the floodgates kind of open up. More people are going to be on the app. More people are going to be selling and reselling. And so you've got to be willing to work harder because that competition is going to increase.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that, because that kind of leads to our next point about the idea that the algorithm, I think, has become more difficult. Right? There was a time where you knew if you consistently listed, you would have consistent sales. You knew that if you always accepted offers, you would have consistent sales. You knew that if your sell-through rate was good, you had consistent sales. Now it's all changed. I do think it is more difficult than ever to kind of predict the algorithm. Not saying that anybody was able to predict it, but I think there was an understanding like a year ago, like, hey, as long as you had your item specifics, you were consistent listing, you had free returns, you're a top rated seller, like you checked all these boxes, it guaranteed you sales. And what I'm finding is, especially in the social media space, a lot of people talking about like, hey, I've done everything right, but my sales still aren't consistent. Right. And so be aware of that. Now, it could be part of it is maybe eBay wants you to niche down into selling like more specific items instead of selling everything. And maybe that's true about me and other people that have stores of 3,000 plus, where they have a bunch of stuff, but the algorithm doesn't really know how to like send those sales because it's all kinds of stuff, right? You sell one video game, you sell a t-shirt, you sell a tire iron, you sell shoe polish, whatever it is, it's like all over the place. And so I don't have the answer to that, but it's something I want people to think about. You know, this is why promoted listings, I think, has become very popular with eBay, is because I think with the more sellers that are on there, with the fact that now eBay is requiring more sellers, promoted listings is one more way to stay more competitive. And, you know, it's funny because I listened, for example, Kevin Commonwealth Baker, and he talks about he doesn't use promoted listings. Auction Professor doesn't use promoted listings, and things are still going well for them. And so I don't think it's the end all, but I do think if you're someone that, number one, has no social media, number two, you're selling in a pretty crowded field, whether it be clothing, video games, whatever it is, there is a place for promoted listings because the algorithm, this is kind of like you're baiting the algorithm to feed your items higher into the feed. So just my thoughts. I don't know, Mike, if you have more to add to that one, but just wanted to hear that out with people.
Yeah, and the reality is, I do think that there is some maybe more difficulty in the algorithm, but part of it is like, if you go back to the beginning of the podcast, 6 years ago, we were speculating on what the algorithm wanted and didn't want. We had whole algorithm episodes. So I think it's one of those things where hindsight's always 2020. And I feel like you can kind of look back in the past and go like, oh, we had a better grasp of it then than we do now. But I don't know if we ever really had a grasp of it. I think one of the things is algorithm is an easy thing to blame. And I think that it does play a role, and there's some weird things that are outside of our control. But it's one of those things like no matter what happens, it can kind of become the scapegoat. And so we might look back a year from now and our sales might be the same as they are now and say like, man, the algorithm is so much harder than it was back then, just because we sometimes add complexity where there might not be complexity. I mean, I think a lot of the things still apply, right? Like new listings, good reputation. Obviously, any way eBay is making money, they're going to promote, right? Like if it's promoted items, of course, those items are going to end up higher up on the search list because eBay takes a higher cut of that, right? So like if you just think like how would the business think? Now, of course, there's those one-offs and not even just one-offs. I think we've all experienced it where it's like, it seems like my store shut off for like a couple of days, and all of a sudden the floodgates got opened up, like something happened. But again, that may have been outside of our control anyways. There might not have been anything we could have done, but it might have been like right before the floodgates opened and whatever was happened changes. You just so happen to like, well, what if I change everything from 2.3% to 2.4% promoted listings? Oh, that must have been it. It's in some ways, it's almost like the people, like the sports people who are the fanatics, the fans who are like, well, if I wear these socks, the team wins. And it's like, well, maybe it could just be a coincidence.
Yeah, I agreed. All right. And then last of all, here, this whole idea of, I do think eBay, I don't know if this makes it easier. I think it makes it more difficult, but I think volume is king right now on eBay. I think in order to make more money, you're just going to have to sell. And I know that sounds like common sense that you have to sell more, but what I mean by that is you have to sell more for less profit. I think that's where we're at, and I think that's made eBay a little more difficult. But the reality is eBay likes the fees. eBay likes making that money, and so the more you sell, the more you'll get pushed up, I think. And I know a lot of people that were like me back in the day, where they love picking up that $5 item and selling it for $100. Or now you pick up that $5 item, you might have to sell it for $50. Right? You might have to sell it for $40. Like, you got to get that movement going. You got to keep that volume. And I find that most people right now that are being successful on eBay, they're doing volume selling. And it is nice. I mean, I just had a $400 sale the other day. It was one sale. It was an item I paid like $2 for, but that's becoming more of the exception than back in the day. It was like the norm for me. And so I need to push out volume.
No,
any thoughts on that, Mike? Any thoughts in the audience? Anything else you want to talk about real quick?
Yes, we got 39 people watching right now. If you haven't hit the like or subscribe button, hit that like, hit that subscribe button, and yeah, let us know what do you think about eBay? Have things gotten better for eBay, worse for eBay? What about just in general for reselling? And I'm trying to pull up Twitter over here, or X. And
I appreciate everybody. We got a decent crowd over from X watching, so appreciate all of you that are tuning into us on X. All right, hey, here's the bottom line though: eBay is still one of the greatest vehicles out there for you to be able to make money, whether it's part-time, whether it's full-time reselling. It's all about adapting. Whether it gets difficult or easier, it doesn't matter. Now, the one catch that is there are other platforms out there that you can sell on, but I still find that eBay is my main go-to for secondary items. And with that being said, hey, make sure to be real,
be relevant,
and be reselling late.
Peace.
Thank you, everyone, for
sunset. It's a brand new day. With our eyes on the prize, we're on our way. Hitting garage sales before the crowd. Searching for treasures, making us proud. Through the hours of this